Ignition sequence starts.
Good morning, and welcome to this look at the activity inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where a team of specialists is always on duty to monitor the systems of the station and help the Expedition 65 crew members with their jobs in orbit. Commander Aki Hoshide and his American, Russian, and French crewmates have spent the week tending to a lot of science experiments underway in the station's laboratory modules, while keeping the station operating in good shape and monitoring operations with a cargo vehicle delivering 4 tons of new supplies.
Houston Station on Space to Ground.
Welcome to Space to Ground. I'm Nilofer Ramji. This space station welcomed Northrop Grumman's Cygnus resupply spacecraft, and with it comes new science investigations.
And we have liftoff of Antares for NG-60 mission to the Wallops Flight Facility.
Cygnus launched on the company's 16th commercial resupply mission to the space station on Tuesday, August 10th. The SS Ellison Onizuka, named in honor of the first Asian American astronaut, delivered over 8,200 pounds of supplies, hardware, and experiments to the space station when it arrived on Thursday, August 12th. NASA's Megan MacArthur used the Canadarm2 to reach out and capture the spacecraft prior to ground teams installing it to the station's Unity module, where it will remain for about 3 months. Over 2,300 pounds of science and research have now arrived at the space station. Here's what's on the horizon. The Flow, Boiling, and Condensation Investigation aims to develop a facility to collect data about two-phase flow and heat transfer in microgravity. Data from microgravity and Earth's gravity are needed to validate numerical simulation tools for designing thermal management systems. European Space Agency astronaut Thomas Pesquet will conduct the Blob investigation, allowing students ages 10 through 18 to replicate the investigation and study a naturally occurring slime mold that is capable of basic forms of learning and adaptation. To learn more about these and other scientific studies arriving on Cygnus, follow @ISS_research on Twitter. Meanwhile, NASA astronauts Mark Vande Hei and Shane Kimbrough spent some time speaking to Cool Science Radio to share their perspective from 250 miles above the Earth. During the interview, Shane was asked about his favorite science experiment.
We're growing chili peppers in space. And so I got to start that experiment a little over a month ago. Yesterday we got a chance to pull it all out and look at all the plants and actually thin some out in order to give all the nutrients to the really healthy ones, and they're all looking great. So here in a couple months we're hoping to have a harvest and get to eat some chili peppers.
That's all for today on Space to Ground. For all of the latest updates, head over to nasa.gov. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Up there in orbit during long-duration spaceflight, the astronauts and cosmonauts can experience structural changes to their hearts. But exactly what changes and how they occur are not yet clearly understood. That's why researchers are investigating cardiovascular stem cells so they can better understand the role those cells play in the makeup of our hearts, as well as in tissue regeneration.
We're one of the first labs to be sending cardiovascular progenitor cells, so we know that they're an early population of cells. They're very potent in what they can become. We're able to create different types of cardiac tissue, whether it be cardiomyocytes, the heart muscle cells, or endothelium, the lining of blood vessels. These cells that we work with have the capacity to become a variety of different cardiovascular derivatives, and they function in a unique way in response to the environment and to different treatments. And so there's a lot that we can learn from these experiments. So the Kearns-Yonker Laboratory has been studying cardiovascular progenitor cells for a while and using them for cardiac repair and developing biologically active tissues. We'll be looking at disparities in the response of cells obtained from neonatal patients versus adult patients, and how that disparity exists at a molecular level. We'll be able to compare the microgravity exposed cells to the simulated exposed cells using the same clones. We'll be able to compare these two results and see if we can use simulated microgravity or even some type of microgravity-inspired treatment to help really promote cardiac repair. We're really excited for the spaceflight. We've been learning quite a bit even from the simulations, and we think that with the spaceflight we'll be able to truly extend these observations and hopefully promote cardiac repair, develop biologically active tissue, and even advance these insights into anticipating and treating illnesses in space.
Research on technology is another aspect of the scientific mission of the International Space Station. An experiment called optical fiber production in microgravity, provided by the private company Made in Space, operated on the station for just a few weeks, and then it was returned to Earth on the same Cargo Dragon spacecraft that brought it to orbit. Its goal was to demonstrate both the scientific and the commercial merits of manufacturing exotic optical fibers in space.
We're excited at Made in Space to work with NASA and CASIS to use the ISS National Lab. Made in Space Fiber Optics is a payload to manufacture Z-band glass fiber in microgravity. It will produce hundreds of meters of very, very high-end optical fiber. Manufacturing fiber in microgravity has been theorized to increase the performance by creating a better product. And by better product, I mean a clearer, more pure glass. And that is due to the microcrystal formation. It makes the glass a little cloudier when the crystals form here on Earth. And in space, it'll be more pure and clear. And in microgravity, they form in a different way, in a more pure way with fewer defects. What could happen is a 100-time increase in performance. This is a really cool project because it can benefit everyone here on Earth. You know, fiber optics are used for various applications, medical devices, lasers, but also internet. And this can really help, improve bandwidth and performance and lower the cost of internet and data centers. So really, it's a product that can affect everyone.
At any given time, there could be 300 experiments underway on board the International Space Station, like the couple that we just mentioned, or the ones that are just arriving on the brand new Cygnus cargo ship. And just before she left the station to return to Earth at the end of Expedition 59, astronaut Anne McClain shared her perspective on the research that she helped conduct during her 6 months in space.
The International Space Station is a national orbiting laboratory. Every single day we are answering big questions about Earth and about space, about where we came from and about where we're going. But the other thing that we're doing is we're learning more questions to ask. And so the question really, I think that's important to say is, who are we if we stop exploring? Every day is the intersection of the magical and the technical. Our jobs require a lot of focus, a lot of heads down, detailed work, but there's always moments throughout every day that you step back and you realize, we're working off the planet in microgravity in one of the most unforgiving environments known to mankind. It's really incredible.
Along with the research that's being done inside the International Space Station's many laboratory modules, the station provides a platform for science research that is targeting the Earth. Researchers who are trying to gain a better understanding of lightning and thunderstorms are using the station to study transient luminous events, which are storm-related phenomena that you can't see from down here on Earth.
A display of lights above the storm. presented by Science at NASA. In 2015, European Space Agency or ESA astronaut Andreas Mogensen was on board the International Space Station, or ISS, photographing the tops of thunderstorms from Earth orbit. And he saw something very interesting indeed: blue jets. Blue jets are a type of transient luminous event, or TLE, flashes and glows that appear above storms that are results of activity occurring in and below those storms. Blue jets pulse from the tops of intense thunderstorms and reach up toward the edge of space. In January 2017, researchers at Denmark's National Space Institute published their analysis of his observations in Geophysical Research Letters. Mogensen was able to capture clear video as the station flew over the Bay of Bengal, and they were amazed by what that video showed. Olivier Chanrion, lead author of the publication, reported that during 160 seconds of video footage, 245 pulsating blue discharges were observed, corresponding to a rate of about 90 per minute. One of the blue jets observed reached 25 miles or 40 kilometers above sea level. Visual evidence of TLEs wasn't available until 1989. Early evidence included red sprites photographed by cameras on board the space shuttle and photographs taken during a NASA and University of Alaska airborne campaign. Red sprites are glows in the upper atmosphere tied to the presence of large lightning flashes, but not attached to the clouds themselves. In recent years, the ISS has afforded astronauts the opportunity to photograph a number of natural light shows produced at the tops of thunderstorms. A 2013 study by researchers from the French Alternative Energies and Atomic Energy Commission analyzed pictures from the NASA Crew Earth Observations Facility aboard the station. The pictures revealed 15 sprites and their parent lightning flashes. In August 2015, the Expedition 44 crew on board the station photographed red sprites over 2 different storms within 3 minutes of one another. First over the American Midwest, and then near the coast of El Salvador. These sprites reached as high as 62 miles or 100 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. All of these studies are contributing to researchers' understanding of lightning and thunderstorms, how they form and develop over time, and why storms produce different TLEs in different circumstances. However, according to Tim Lang, atmospheric scientist at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, TLE studies have been, to an extent, fortunate observation. We've gotten better at finding them, but it's mostly case-based analysis. NASA and partner agencies are advancing in their efforts to make continuous storm observations. NASA's Lightning Imaging Sensor, or LISS, was installed on the International Space Station in February 2017 as part of the DoD Space Test Program. LISS on the station is the latest in a line of instruments used to locate and detect lightning over a large region of the Earth's surface. The Atmosphere-Space Interactions Monitor, or ASIM, will be installed outside Europe's Columbus Laboratory on the ISS later this year. Torsten Neubert, ASIM principal investigator, says, "The instruments will monitor thunderstorms and their effects on Earth's atmosphere, gathering information about blue jets and other TLEs, as well as flashes of X and gamma rays. LISS and ASIM will be providing data that gives researchers the opportunity to analyze storms from both below and above. All of these studies are adding to our knowledge of how storms evolve and change, helping improve storm models that could lead to better predictions and forecasts." For more science from above the clouds, visit www.nasa.gov/station. For electrifying updates, stay tuned to science.nasa.gov.
The major goals of the International Space Station program are to support the commercial use of space, advance scientific research, promote international cooperation, and help lay the groundwork for future exploration out beyond Earth orbit. Those future missions will be part of the Artemis program, which is working toward the first flight of the Orion spacecraft on the Space Launch System rocket, supported by the ground systems at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Here's an update on the progress that's been made in getting the hardware ready for that next flight. At NASA, we're working to return astronauts to the moon in just a few years, to explore it and to learn to live there long term, all part of the plan to get humans ready to venture out into the solar system in the years after that. It's called the Artemis program, and last summer, teams here in Houston went into the giant swimming pool called the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory to work on developing tools and training plans for the astronauts who will conduct the moonwalks of the future. Take a look. The structure of the International Space Station relies on a series of trusses engineered to withstand the different forces that the station may encounter in low Earth orbit. In this demonstration video, astronaut Ricky Arnold explains the significance of these resilient structures and the forces they're up against in microgravity.
Hey there, I'm NASA astronaut Ricky Arnold. Welcome aboard the International Space Station. Today we're going to talk about the Space Station truss. The truss segment is just about 100 meters from side to side.
A truss is a segment or part of the whole integrated truss structure. The trusses are used to support the 16 solar array panels, which provide energy for us, and radiators which get rid of excess heat that builds up inside the space station. The design of the truss involves triangles and beams, which can be seen on Earth in structures like bridges. Why triangles? Well, this is because of their unique geometric properties, their methods of transferring loads, and their spatial openness. Triangles are more rigid than rectangular shapes because they have fewer joints. The larger number of joints in a shape, the more prone that shape is to being impacted by shear forces.
What I'd like to talk a little bit about today is some of the forces that can act upon the truss. Well, the first force I want to talk about is compression force. And compression force is just like it sounds, two things coming together. So if we apply a compression force to the truss, what do you think is going to happen? Well, let me go ahead and do it. And you can see right here where the truss would bend. What do you think the opposite force of compression is? Now, it's going to be pulling apart. We call that a tension force. And a tension force is what's going to help maybe even rigidize the truss segment, but it also could potentially pull it apart. I'm not going to pull apart this tape measure because we probably need it later for some work we have to do.
Now, if you look carefully, this next force I want to talk about
is basically kind of like a twisting force, and we call it torsion. And even when I just let go of the tape measure, you can see it will actually start to happen a little bit. You can start to see, because the center of mass is actually right here, where most of the tape measure is located, and when I let it go, the tape measure itself starts to twist just a little bit. Finally, the fourth force
that can act along a truss segment
is that can occur at a single point where two opposing forces work on a single point along the truss, just like they can upon the Earth's surface. Think about some earthquakes. You can have a plate that is, or along a fault line where one side of the fault line is moving upward or being forced upward while the other side is moving downward. And that force in one point in opposite directions is called a shear force. And we can also have that happen on the truss segment. Something like this.
One thing to think about, where do these forces come from?
One force, even though we're up here largely out of the Earth's atmosphere, we do still have drag with the Earth's atmosphere, which can impart loads on or impart a force on the truss segment. Another, I already hinted at earlier, is crew working inside. We're up here, we're exercising, we're moving really heavy pieces of equipment around. So we have an amazing engineering team on the ground, and we have specific disciplines that their job is to monitor all the forces imparted upon the International Space Station. They keep track of all those various forces I talked about and where they could be coming from, the atmosphere, visiting vehicles, or even things that the crew are doing inside the space station, and to make sure that those forces aren't significant enough to cause any damage to this wonderful laboratory and living space we have up here in low Earth orbit. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time. So long.
Along with being a platform for scientific instruments to study the Earth, the International Space Station is a place for human beings to get a view of the planet, a view that's unlike any other. The men and women who've been there say the terrific pictures they share with us are still a bit lacking. Seems that seeing the super wide-angle view of the home planet with your own eyes changes your outlook on the world. It did for former astronaut Mike Foreman.
You're strapped into the space shuttle on the launch pad, and the countdown gets to 0, and you feel like you're just in a car wreck because the solid rocket boosters light off and they give you a kick in the backside like you were just rear-ended at a stop sign, literally, and launch you into space, and 8.5 minutes later you're there and float out of your seat and start taking in those views, which I can't describe. That's one thing I wish I was better at. It was actually describing that experience of being weightless or experiencing the views of the Earth. It's just, you know, so incredible. I was there for 2 space shuttle missions, so I was never there for more than 16 days at a time, but every time I had a spare minute, I would go to a window, take a look out. Spacewalks always seem to be very busy and task-focused events where I got to do this and I got to move over here and do this, and rarely did you have a minute where you could just say, just take a minute and enjoy the view. But you know, there were those minutes every once in a while, and the view from outside the spacecraft, you know, with that full panoramic vision through your helmet visor was just incredible. So I always kid those astronauts that don't do the spacewalks. You know, I said the view from inside here through this flat window is pretty good. You know, the view from outside is just amazing. You see the colors of blue that you've never even seen before, the shades and hues of blue, and you see that fine, thin atmosphere that protects us. It's just almost overwhelming when you first see it. I think if you're not a conservationist before you go to space, you're at least partly a conservationist when you come back, because when you see how thin that atmosphere is, that protective layer that we have here that allows us to walk around like without a spacesuit on down here, you know, and breathe the air, you think, wow, we really have to take care of this because it does look so fragile from space. I think if we could get all 6 billion people, or however many we have now on this planet, to see that view for just a few minutes, I think the whole planet would change.
If you want another look at any of the stories you saw here today, you can find them on YouTube and Facebook, along with lots of other great features on a wide variety of NASA topics. So check them out. Be sure to look around. If you're looking for good conversation about human spaceflight, check out Houston, We Have a Podcast. That's our weekly show in which we talk to folks who are involved in many areas of space exploration. And today, Gary Jordan talks with a group of NASA interns to learn their secrets for getting the chance to see NASA from the inside and turning that opportunity into their own success. Go to nasa.gov/podcasts for this week's episode and all the previous episodes. In fact, the full library of all the NASA podcasts are there. You can also find them all on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud.